Good evening. Before we begin tonight's journey into darkness, if you find yourself genuinely captivated by these stories, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It's always fascinating to see how far these tales travel. What you're about to hear tonight are accounts that defy easy explanation. Stories that have kept me awake long after I first encountered them. I'd suggest dimming the lights, settling into a comfortable position, and preparing yourself for something different. These aren't your typical campfire tales. Story 1. My name is Marcus Webb, and I need to tell someone what happened in apartment 4B before the building gets torn down next month. I've kept this to myself for 8 years, but the demolition notice arrived last Tuesday. And I realized that if I don't document this now, the only evidence will disappear forever. I moved into the Waterford Apartments in Portland, Oregon, on September 14th, 2016. I was 26, fresh off a brutal breakup, and desperately needed cheap rent and a fresh start. The Waterford delivered on cheap, $500 a month for a one-bedroom with street parking. The building was a 1960s relic, mustard yellow brick with narrow hallways that smelled like old carpet and pine sol. My unit was on the 4th floor, sandwiched between a retired postal worker named Jean and what I was told was a vacant unit, 4B. Jean warned me about 4B during my first week. We'd run into each other at the mail slots, and he asked how I was settling in. When I mentioned the occasional noises through the wall, he got this tight expression, like he'd bitten into something sour. That apartment's been empty for 3 years, he said, not meeting my eyes. Management can't keep tenants in there. Longest anyone's lasted is 2 months. I asked why, but he just shook his head and hurried back upstairs with his mail clutched to his chest. I figured it was typical apartment building ghost story nonsense. Every old building has its mythology. The first genuinely strange incident happened on October 2nd. I remember the date because it was my sister's birthday, and I'd been on the phone with her until almost midnight. After we hung up, I brushed my teeth and headed to bed. My apartment had this railroad layout. Living room, then kitchen, then bedroom in the back. The bedroom shared a wall with 4B. I was nearly asleep when I heard it. A woman's voice muffled through the wall, speaking in a steady, measured tone. I couldn't make out words, just the cadence. Someone talking continuously, like reading aloud or giving a presentation. This went on for maybe 10 minutes before stopping abruptly. I lay there in the dark, listening. The building was old enough that you heard your neighbors constantly. Footsteps, television noise, the occasional argument. But 4B was supposed to be empty. I convinced myself Jean was wrong, that management hadn't rented it out and simply hadn't mentioned it. The next morning, I knocked on 4B's door. No answer. I tried again that evening. Nothing. On the third day, I asked Jean directly if he'd seen anyone moving into 4B. No one's been in there, he said firmly. The door stays locked. Management inspects it monthly, but that's it. I've been hearing someone talking through the wall, I told him. His face went carefully blank. You hear lots of things in old buildings. Sound travels in funny ways. But I knew what I'd heard, and it happened again and again, always after midnight, always the same woman's voice, always that same measured speaking tone. Never music, never conversation, just one voice speaking continuously for 10 to 20 minutes before falling silent. I decided to record it. On October 11th, I set up my phone against the shared wall before bed. Audio recording app ready. Sure enough, around 12:30 a.m., The voice started. I let it record for 15 minutes, then played it back the next morning. The recording was clear. A woman's voice, youngish, with a slight accent I couldn't place, and I could finally make out what she was saying. She was reciting numbers, just numbers, in groups of 4, with brief pauses between. 7924, 3186, 5503, 9441. On and on, hundreds of number sequences, in that same calm, almost mechanical tone. I listened to the entire 15-minute recording. She never stopped, never varied her pace, never made a mistake or hesitated. I took the recording to the building manager, a perpetually exhausted woman named Carol, who worked out of a cluttered office on the ground floor. She listened to maybe 30 seconds before stopping it. "Probably coming from outside," she said. "Sound bounces weird in the courtyard. It's coming through my bedroom wall from 4B. There's no one in 4B. Then who's talking?" Carol's jaw tightened. "Mr. Webb, I've managed this property for 11 years. 4B is empty. It's been empty. Whatever you're hearing is coming from somewhere else." "Can I see inside it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it's not your apartment. If you're having noise issues, I can offer you a different unit on the second floor." I declined. Despite everything, I actually liked my apartment. Good natural light, decent water pressure, close to my work. I wasn't going to get driven out by some weird number recitation that only happened occasionally. But it started happening more frequently. 3 times a week. Then 5. Then every single night. Always after midnight. Always the same voice. The same number sequences. I recorded it multiple times. I even tried knocking on the wall during one of her recitations. She didn't pause, didn't react, just kept going. I started sleeping with earplugs, but even then I'd wake up, aware of the voice vibrating through the wall, even if I couldn't hear the words. It got under my skin. I'd lie awake, earplugs in, knowing she was there on the other side of the wall, reciting those endless numbers into the darkness. On November 3rd, I snapped. It was 2:47 a.m. She'd been going for over an hour, and I was wide awake with a massive deadline at work the next day. I got out of bed, threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my phone for the flashlight, and went into the hallway. The Waterford's 4th floor hallway was L-shaped, with dim overhead fluorescents that buzzed constantly. My apartment was 4C at the far end. 4B was directly next door, its brown door identical to mine, except for the brass numbers and a small laminated notice taped at eye level. "Unit not available for viewing." I pressed my ear against 4B's door. The voice was clearer here, sharp and immediate. She was inside, right there, speaking those numbers with that same unwavering cadence. I knocked. "Hello? I'm your neighbor. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but..." The voice stopped. Complete, immediate silence. I waited, barely breathing. After maybe 30 seconds, I knocked again. "Hello?" Nothing. I tried the doorknob. Locked, obviously. I put my ear back against the door. Total silence. Whatever I'd interrupted, it was gone. I went back to bed. The voice didn't return that night. I actually slept. The first decent sleep I'd gotten in weeks. But the next night she was back. Same time, same numbers. And now that I'd knocked, now that I'd made contact, however briefly, it felt different. It felt personal. I started researching the building's history. The Waterford apartments were built in 1963 by a developer named Harold Waterford, no relation to the Crystal Company. Pretty standard post-war construction. Cheap, functional, designed to fill Portland's housing shortage. Nothing dramatic in its past. No murders, no suicides I could find. It had changed ownership 4 times, been cited for various code violations over the decades, but nothing unusual. I couldn't find any news stories specifically about apartment 4B. I even went to the county records office and pulled the property files. Nothing helpful. Gene continued to avoid me. The one time I cornered him in the stairwell and asked directly what he knew about 4B, he actually pushed past me, mumbling something about being late for an appointment. The woman in 4A, directly across from the mysterious unit, was a graduate student named Yuki. I'd seen her coming and going, but never really talked to her. On November 18th, I knocked on her door around 6:00 p.m. when I knew she was usually home. She answered wearing paint-stained overalls, hair up in a messy bun, looking harried. "Yes? Hey, I'm Marcus from 4C. Quick question. Do you ever hear anything from 4B? Like, late at night?" Her expression shifted instantly, from annoyed to guarded. "Why?" "Because I keep hearing someone in there talking, reciting numbers, and I know it's supposed to be empty." Yuki glanced down the hallway, then stepped aside. "Come in." Her apartment was identical to mine layout-wise, but felt completely different. Plants everywhere, art prints on the walls, the organized chaos of someone actively living. She shut the door and turned to face me. "How long have you been hearing it?" she asked. "About 6 weeks. You?" "Since I moved in. 14 months. That landed between us like a stone in still water. "Have you reported it?" I asked. 3 times. Carol says it's impossible. She offered me a different unit. I can't afford to move right now. I'm locked into my lease and I can't pay double rent. Yuki crossed her arms. "What does yours sound like?" "A woman's voice, reciting 4-digit number sequences. Starts after midnight, goes for anywhere from 10 minutes to over an hour. You?" "Same. Exact same. I recorded it twice, but then stopped because it was making me paranoid listening back to it." She paused. "Have you tried going inside?" "The door's locked. Carol won't let me see it." "I tried picking it once," Yuki admitted. "Don't look at me like that. I was desperate. It didn't work. The lock's good quality, not like our cheap ones. And there's something else." She walked to her kitchen window and gestured for me to follow. Her window faced the interior courtyard, same as mine. She pointed across and down slightly. "That's 4B's window." I could see it. Same style as ours. Same beige curtains that every unit seemed to have. The curtains were drawn. "I've watched it," Yuki said quietly. "Different times of day, different days. The curtains never open. The lights never turn on. But sometimes, late at night, you can see movement behind them." "What kind of movement?" "Like someone standing there. Just standing, not doing anything. Just a shape behind the curtain." My skin prickled. "How often?" "Maybe once a week. It's hard to catch. You have to be looking at the right moment. But I've seen it at least a dozen times." We stood there at her window, staring across at 4B. The curtains hung still and lifeless. "There's one more thing," Yuki said. "Last month, around 3 a.m., I heard someone in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, dragging something. I looked through my peephole and saw Carol. She was opening the door to 4B. Did she go inside?" "She stood in the doorway for maybe 2 minutes. Didn't go in, just stood there. Then she closed it and left." I thought about confronting her the next day, but Yuki shrugged helplessly. "What am I going to say? I'm spying on you in the middle of the night?" I left Yuki's apartment with more questions than answers. That night, I lay in bed, waiting. The voice started at 12:52 a.m. I got up and went to my kitchen window, looking across at 4B. The window was dark, curtains drawn, but as I watched, a shape moved behind them. Yuki was right. Just a silhouette, person-sized, standing motionless. I watched for maybe 5 minutes. The shape didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there. Then, slowly, it turned. I couldn't see features, just the outline through the beige curtain, but it turned until it was facing my window. Facing me. We stayed like that, watching each other across the courtyard, separated by 40 feet and 2 panes of glass. The voice continued through my bedroom wall, reciting numbers into the darkness. Finally, I backed away from the window. My hands were shaking. I went to my bedroom, put in my earplugs, and buried my head under my pillow. When I finally fell asleep near dawn, I dreamed of numbers scrolling endlessly across a dark screen. The next day, I called in sick to work. I was exhausted, paranoid, jumping at every sound. I knew I needed to either move out or figure out what the hell was actually happening. I chose the latter. At 11:00 p.m. that night, I positioned myself in the 4th floor stairwell with a clear view of 4B's door. I'd told myself I'd wait until 4:00 a.m., if necessary. I wanted to see if Carol or anyone accessed that apartment during the night. The stairwell was cold, the concrete steps uncomfortable. I sat on the landing between the 4th and 5th floors, mostly hidden, but with a sight line to 4B. The hours crawled past. I watched Gene return home around 11:45 p.m., fumbling with his keys. Yuki came back around 12:30 a.m., looking tired. The building settled into its late-night sounds, plumbing groans, the distant hum of the furnace. At 1:15 a.m., right on schedule, I heard it, faint but unmistakable through the stairwell walls, the voice from 4B beginning her nightly recitation. At 2:33 a.m., the stairwell door below me opened. I pressed back against the wall, watching through the metal railing. Carol emerged, alone, carrying a canvas bag. She walked directly to 4B, unlocked it with a key from her pocket, and slipped inside, shutting the door behind her. The voice stopped immediately. I waited, heart hammering. What was happening in there? 5 minutes passed. 10. At 20 minutes, I crept down and positioned myself near 4B's door, phone ready to record. I couldn't hear anything. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. Complete silence. I stood there for another 10 minutes, barely breathing, until finally the door opened. I barely had time to jump back. Carol emerged, canvas bag still in hand, and froze when she saw me standing 5 feet away. "Mr. Webb?" Her voice was flat, unsurprised. "You're up late. So are you. What's in 4B?" "That's not your concern. I've been hearing someone in there every night for 2 months. A woman's voice, reciting numbers. It stops whenever you go inside. What's going on?" Carol's face remained carefully neutral. "You need to go back to your apartment." "Or what? You'll evict me?" "I've paid my rent on time. I haven't violated my lease. You're the one creeping around in the middle of the night, doing God knows what in a supposedly empty apartment." For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not anger, but something sadder. Resignation, maybe. "Mr. Webb, I'm going to tell you this once. Stop investigating 4B. Stop listening to it. Stop talking to other tenants about it. This doesn't concern you, and you're only going to upset yourself. What's in there? Go home." She walked past me to the stairwell and disappeared. I stood outside 4B, staring at its closed door. I tried the knob, locked again. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. But not empty silence. Occupied silence, if that makes sense. The particular quality of quiet that means someone's holding their breath on the other side. I went back to my apartment. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found a notice slipped under my door. Formal building letterhead dated that day. Notice of lease termination. I had 30 days to vacate. The reason given, repeated violations of quiet enjoyment policy, and harassment of building management. I'd never violated anything. This was retaliation, pure and simple. I could fight it, probably win, but did I really want to stay in a building where the manager was gaslighting me about phantom voices and sneaking into empty apartments at 2 a.m.? That night the voice didn't come, or the next night, or the night after that. 4B was silent. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing, if the stress and sleep deprivation had caused some kind of extended auditory hallucination. But Yuki confirmed she'd stopped hearing it too. And Gene, when I ran into him on my second to last day in the building, grabbed my arm and whispered, "It's quiet now. Thank God. Whatever you did, it worked." I didn't do anything. I wanted to tell him. I just witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see. I moved out on December 15th, 2016. Got a place in Beaverton, 20 minutes away. Double the rent, but worth it for my sanity. I drove past the Waterford occasionally over the years. It was on my route to my favorite coffee shop. The mustard yellow building always looked the same, slightly shabby, curtains drawn in apartment 4B. I looked into Carol's background once, just curious. She'd worked at the Waterford for 11 years, like she said, but before that, her employment history got murky. There were gaps, including a 3-year period with no listed employer. I found one news article from 2003, before she worked at the Waterford. Carol Jensen, questioned in connection with a missing persons case in Tacoma. No charges filed. The missing person, a woman named Rebecca Huang, was never found. I don't know what's in 4B. I don't know if it's supernatural or something worse. Something human and terrible that Carol is maintaining, or containing, or protecting. I don't know if that voice is a recording, a ghost, or something still alive behind that locked door. What I do know is that the Waterford apartments are scheduled for demolition on January 20th, 2025. Whatever is in 4B will either be released or buried forever under rubble. Part of me hopes it's the latter. Part of me thinks about calling the police, giving them an anonymous tip to check 4B before the building comes down. But mostly, I try not to think about it at all. I try not to remember the shape behind the curtain turning to watch me. I try not to hear that calm voice in my memory reciting endless numbers into the darkness. And I try very hard not to wonder whose voice it was. Story 2. My grandmother died on a Thursday in March 2019, 3 weeks after her 92nd birthday. Her name was Eleanor Pritchard, and she'd lived in the same farmhouse in rural Vermont for 70 years. She was sharp until the very end. No dementia, no confusion, just a body that finally gave out. I was her only grandchild, and she left everything to me. The house, the land, her modest savings, and an antique wooden box with specific instructions that I was to open it alone after dark on the first new moon following her death. The new moon fell on April 5th, 2019. I'd been staying at her farmhouse since the funeral, sorting through her belongings, meeting with lawyers, beginning the overwhelming process of deciding what to do with a property I'd inherited but never really wanted. The house was beautiful in a haunting way. 2 stories, white clapboard, surrounded by 40 acres of overgrown fields and dense woods. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles away. At night, the silence was absolute. I'd found the box in her bedroom closet, exactly where her will said it would be. It was about the size of a shoebox, made of dark wood. Walnut, maybe, with brass hinges and a small brass clasp. No lock. It was surprisingly heavy. I'd been tempted to open it immediately, but her instructions had been specific and emphatic. Eleanor wasn't superstitious or dramatic. If she said to wait for the new moon and open it alone after dark, She had a reason. April 5th was overcast, the new moon invisible behind cloud cover. I waited until 9 p.m., made myself a cup of tea, and sat at her kitchen table with the box in front of me. The house creaked around me, settling into the cold spring night. I opened the box. Inside, wrapped in faded blue cloth, was a stack of photographs. Beneath them, a leather journal, its pages brittle with age. And beneath that, something that made my breath catch. A small bundle of letters tied with string, and a silver locket I'd seen Eleanor wear my entire childhood. I picked up the photographs first. They were old, 1940s, maybe early 1950s, black and white, the kind with scalloped edges. The top photo showed a young woman who looked eerily like me. Same dark hair, same narrow face, same slightly crooked smile. She was standing in front of this very house, wearing a floral dress and squinting into the sun. I flipped it over. Written in faded pencil. Eleanor, summer 1949. My grandmother, 22 years old, a lifetime before I was born. I went through the rest of the photos. Eleanor at various ages. Eleanor with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark-haired, handsome in a severe way. Eleanor holding a baby. That photo stopped me. I'd never known my grandmother to have children before my mother. Mom was born in 1962, when Eleanor was 35, an only child, raised in this farmhouse, eventually moving to Boston for college and never coming back, except for brief visits. But this baby in the photograph looked like it was from the early 1950s, judging by the print quality and Eleanor's apparent age. She was maybe 25, holding an infant, looking exhausted and sad in a way that transcended normal new mother fatigue. I set the photos aside and opened the journal. The first entry was dated May 3rd, 1949. We moved into the farmhouse today. James says it's a fresh start, away from the gossip and the judgment. I want to believe him. The house is beautiful, even if it's isolated. The fields need work, but James is strong and capable. We can make a life here. We have to. I flipped through the entries. Eleanor wrote sporadically, sometimes daily, sometimes with weeks between entries. The writing chronicled the mundane details of farm life, but there was an undercurrent of anxiety, of things unsaid. June 12th, 1949. I'm certain now, 3 months along. James is overjoyed. I wish I could share his enthusiasm, but all I feel is dread. August 30th, 1949. The baby moves constantly. James talks to it through my belly, makes plans. He doesn't notice how I flinch away. He doesn't see what I see. That entry ended abruptly. I turned the page. September 14th, 1949. Dr. Morrison says I'm healthy. The pregnancy is progressing normally. He thinks my fears are typical anxiety. He doesn't believe me about the dreams. No one does. October 1st, 1949. I see him in the woods, always at dusk, always at the tree line, watching the house. James says I'm imagining things, that pregnancy hormones are making me paranoid. But I know what I see. The man in the woods is real and he's waiting. My skin prickled. I looked up from the journal, suddenly aware of the darkness pressing against the kitchen windows. The house was silent except for the refrigerator's hum. I kept reading. November 8th, 1949. The baby came 3 weeks early. A boy. We named him Thomas. He's beautiful and perfect, and I'm terrified of him. James thinks I have postpartum depression. Maybe I do. But that doesn't explain what happened during the delivery. Dr. Morrison won't talk about it. The midwife, Mrs. Carlson, left halfway through and refused to come back. She whispered something to Dr. Morrison, and he went pale. Later, when I was alone with Thomas, I understood why. The entry ended there. I flipped to the next page, but several pages had been torn out. ragged edges still visible in the journal's binding. The next entry was dated 3 months later, February 3rd, 1950. Thomas is growing quickly. Too quickly. He's the size of a 6-month-old, but he's only 3 months. He doesn't cry normally. It's more like laughter, high-pitched and wrong. James won't acknowledge that anything is unusual. He's proud of his son's size and strength. He doesn't see what Thomas does when we're alone. February 20th, 1950. The man in the woods came to the door today. James was in town. I didn't answer, but he knocked for 10 minutes, steady and patient. Thomas laughed the entire time, that horrible laughing cry. When I finally looked through the window, the man was gone, but there were muddy footprints on the porch. Barefoot prints. In February, March 15th, 1950. I found Thomas out of his crib this morning. He's 4 months old. He can't walk, but I found him in the kitchen, standing by the back door, looking out at the woods. When I picked him up, he turned his head at an angle that babies can't manage and smiled at me. It wasn't a baby smile. The entries became shorter, more frantic. April the 2nd, 1950. James is gone. He went hunting yesterday and didn't come back. Sheriff came by this morning, organized a search. I didn't tell them about the man in the woods. What could I say? April 9th, 1950. They found James. Heart attack, they said. He was 30 years old, healthy, strong. I know it wasn't a heart attack. I know Thomas did something. I can't prove it. I can't tell anyone. They'd think I was insane. May 1st, 1950. I tried to give Thomas away. Called the church. Talked about adoption. Father Mackenzie came to the house. He took one look at Thomas and left. Said he'd pray for me. Didn't offer any help. May 20th, 1950. Thomas turned 6 months old today. He looks 2 years old. He can walk. He can speak. Not baby babble, but words. Full sentences. He asked me today, in a voice too deep for a child, when we were going to visit Father in the woods. I've never told him what happened to James. He shouldn't know. I stopped reading and checked the time. 11:47 p.m. I should stop, go to bed, deal with this in the daylight. But I couldn't. I needed to know what happened. June 30th, 1950. The man in the woods is Thomas's real father. I understand that now. I don't know how it happened. I was faithful to James. I never strayed. But somehow, something else made Thomas. The pregnancy dreams weren't dreams. The figure I saw by my bedside those early months wasn't sleep paralysis. It was real, and it left something behind. July 15th, 1950. Thomas is gone. I woke up 3 days ago, and his room was empty. Window open, screen removed from the outside. Muddy footprints, adult-sized, barefoot, leading from the window to the woods. I should call the sheriff. I should organize a search, but I feel only relief. He's gone back to whatever made him. I'm free. That was the last entry. The rest of the journal's pages were blank. I sat at the kitchen table, my tea long cold, trying to process what I'd read. My grandmother had a son in 1950, a son who disappeared, a son she never mentioned to anyone, a son she believed was somehow inhuman. Postpartum psychosis, I thought. It had to be. She'd been isolated. Her husband died suddenly. She'd spiraled into delusion and... What? Killed her baby? Hidden him? Given him away and constructed this elaborate fantasy to cope? But then why leave this for me? Why the specific instructions about when to open it? I picked up the bundle of letters, untied the string. There were 5 envelopes yellowed with age addressed to Eleanor at this farmhouse. No return address, postmarked between 1951 and 1968. I opened the first one, dated October 1951. Dear Mother, I am well. The woods provide. He teaches me. I will see you again when the time is right. Thomas. My hand shook. I opened the second letter, dated 1956. Dear Mother, I am 17 now, by your counting. The woods are home. He says you meant well. I forgive your fear. Thomas. The third, 1962. Dear Mother, I heard you had a daughter, a sister. How curious. Does she know about me? Will you tell her? I think not. He says families are complicated. Thomas. The fourth, 1968. Dear Mother, I am grown now, by any measure. I have children of my own, in a manner of speaking. The woods grow crowded with us. He says it's almost time. Thomas. There was no fifth letter in the pile. I recounted. Only 4 envelopes. But I'd seen 5. I dumped the box's contents onto the table. A 5th envelope fell out, but it was different. New. White. Crisp. Not yellowed at all. Addressed to me. In handwriting I didn't recognize. My name. Today's date. April 5th, 2019. My heart hammered as I opened it. Single sheet of paper. Same handwriting. Dear nephew, grandmother is at rest. The house is yours. We are in the woods. He says the family circle closes soon. We'd like to meet you. Come to the old oak at the eastern property line tomorrow at dusk. Come alone. Family should know family. Your uncle, Thomas. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. The old kitchen windows were black mirrors, reflecting the lit room and hiding everything outside. I grabbed my phone, started to dial 911, then stopped. And say what? My dead grandmother left me a box of letters from her supposedly disappeared son who claims to be living in the woods. I'd sound insane. I went through the house, checking every lock, every window, all secure. I pulled the curtains closed. I went upstairs to the bedroom I'd been using, my grandmother's room, and locked that door too. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the lights on, phone in hand, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house settling. At some point near dawn, exhaustion won, and I dozed off. I woke to full daylight and birdsong. 10:23 a.m. I felt ridiculous. All that terror over old journals and letters that could easily be elaborate fakes or the products of my grandmother's deteriorating mental state in her final weeks. But I hadn't found them in her final weeks. Her lawyer confirmed she'd written the will 5 years ago, and the instructions about the box had been part of it since then. I made coffee, ate a stale bagel, tried to think rationally. The eastern property line was about half a mile away. There was indeed an old oak tree there. I'd walked the property lines with Eleanor when I was 12, and she'd pointed it out, said it was over 200 years old. I had no intention of going to meet Thomas or whoever was playing this sick prank. Instead, I'd pack up, drive back to Boston, hire someone to deal with the house and property, and forget this entire weird episode. That was the plan. I spent the day sorting and packing. Every time I looked at the woods through the windows, they looked ordinary. New spring leaves, dappled sunlight, perfectly normal Vermont forest. But as the afternoon wore on, I felt it. A pull. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. That sense of unfinished business. If this was a prank, I wanted to know who was behind it. If it wasn't, I needed to know that too. At 6:45 p.m., with sunset approaching, I made a decision. I'd go to the oak tree, but I wouldn't be stupid about it. I put on hiking boots, grabbed a flashlight, pocketed my phone fully charged, and, after a moment's hesitation, took the kitchen knife, a sturdy 8-inch chef's blade that I slipped into my jacket pocket. I left the house and walked east across the overgrown fields toward the tree line. The old oak was visible from a distance, massive and gnarled, its lowest branches as thick as my torso. I reached it just as the sun touched the western horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. No one was there. I stood under the oak's canopy, feeling simultaneously relieved and foolish. Of course, no one was there. This was all nonsense, grief-induced delusion, or you came. I spun around. A man stood at the tree line, maybe 20 feet away. He was tall, barefoot despite the cold ground, wearing clothes that looked homemade, rough fabric, simple construction. His hair was long and dark. His face was ageless in a way I can't quite articulate. He could have been 30 or 60. Thomas? My voice came out steadier than I felt. That's what Mother called me. He didn't come closer, just watched me with dark eyes that caught the fading light strangely. You look like her, like she did when she was young. Who are you really? I told you, your uncle, your grandmother's first child, the one she tried to forget. If you're my uncle, you'd be 69 years old. I am, and I'm not. Time works differently for us. Us. He gestured to the woods behind him. I couldn't see anyone else, but I felt them. Presence. Multiple presences, watching from the shadows between the trees. We're family, Thomas said. All of us. Extended family. The woods have been kind to us. What do you want from me? Nothing you're not willing to give. Grandmother's time ended. The house passes to you. We wanted to introduce ourselves, to offer you a choice. What choice? Thomas stepped closer. I tensed, hand moving toward my pocket and the knife, but he stopped at a respectful distance. You can leave, he said simply. Sell the house, never come back. Live your life out there. He gestured vaguely westward. Or you can stay. Keep the house. Learn about your family. The real family, not the one grandmother invented when she started over. She didn't invent anything. She had my mother. My mother had me. That's real. Of course it is. Mother Eleanor built a second life, pretended the first never happened. She did well, lived long, but she never forgot us. She left you that box knowing what it would do. It would bring you here, to us. She's giving you the choice she never took, to know all of what you are. I'm nothing like you, aren't you? Thomas tilted his head. You're curious. You came here despite your fear. You opened the box when you could have just thrown it away. You have her blood, and you have my blood, diluted but present. You belong here more than you know. The sun was gone now, dusk thickening into night. The woods behind Thomas rustled with movement. Think about it, he said. We'll be here. We're always here. The house is yours, whatever you decide. But if you stay, you'll never be alone. You'll have family. He turned and walked back toward the trees. I wanted to call out, ask more questions, demand real answers. But my voice caught. He reached the tree line and paused. Grandmother wants you to know, he said without turning around, that she's sorry she was afraid. She understands now. She's at peace. Then he was gone, melting into the shadows. The woods fell silent. I stood under the oak tree as full darkness arrived, shaking, mind racing. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not out here. I turned on my flashlight and walked back to the house as quickly as I could without running. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in the locked house with every light blazing, my packed bags by the door, waiting for dawn. I left at first light, drove straight back to Boston without stopping. I put the house on the market 2 weeks later. It sold in a month to a couple from New York looking for a rural retreat. I never told them about any of this. I don't know what they experienced there. I kept the box, the journal, the letters, the photographs. Sometimes late at night I take them out and reread them, trying to find a rational explanation, trying to convince myself that Thomas was just a local eccentric who knew my grandmother's history. that the whole thing was an elaborate prank or delusion. But I can't explain the last letter, the one dated the day I opened the box. I can't explain how Thomas knew I'd be there, at that oak tree, at that exact time. And I can't explain the dreams I've had since that night. Dreams of the woods, of figures moving between the trees, of a voice that might be Eleanor's, might be something else's, whispering that family is complicated, that blood calls to blood, that the woods are patient. I still have the house keys. New owners, new locks, but I have the old keys on a ring in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take them out and hold them, feeling their weight, wondering what would happen if I went back, wondering if Thomas is still waiting, wondering if I'd have the courage or the foolishness to accept his offer. I haven't gone back, but I think about it more than I should. And sometimes in the deepest part of night, I think I hear it. That laughing cry from Eleanor's journal, high-pitched and wrong, calling me home. Story 3. In the fall of 2017, I was working as a night shift custodian at Clearwater Regional Medical Center in rural Minnesota. I was 23, had dropped out of college, was living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment, and taking whatever work I could find. The hospital job paid $13 an hour full-time with benefits. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Sunday through Thursday. I worked with 2 other custodians, Miguel, who handled the surgical wing, and Denise, who did the maternity and pediatrics floors. I was assigned to the oldest part of the hospital, the basement level, the ground floor administrative offices, and C-Wing, a section that had been built in the 1970s and was now used mostly for storage and overflow. C-Wing was being slowly phased out. Only about a third of its rooms were still in active use, mostly long-term care patients, people recovering from strokes or waiting for nursing home placements. The rest of the wing sat empty. Lights dimmed, doors closed. It was my responsibility to clean the active rooms and do basic maintenance sweeps of the empty ones. I'm telling you this so you understand the layout. C-Wing was isolated from the main hospital, connected only by a single long corridor on the ground floor. At night, it felt like a different building entirely. Older, quieter. The fluorescent lights hummed at a different frequency. The air smelled like old linoleum and industrial cleaner, with a faint underlying sweetness I could never identify. The incident that changed everything happened on October 17th, 2017. I arrived at 10:50 p.m., parked in the employee lot, and entered through the service entrance like always. Miguel and Denise were already in the break room, organizing their carts. We exchanged the usual greetings, tired nods, complaints about the cold weather starting early this year, brief discussion of weekend plans. I grabbed my cart, mop, bucket, cleaning supplies, trash bags, vacuum, and headed to C-Wing around 11:30 p.m. The active rooms were at the far end, rooms C18 through C24. I'd clean those first, then do my sweep of the empty section. The corridor leading to C-Wing was long and straight, maybe 100 yards, with closed doors on both sides. Old offices, storage closets, a defunct cafeteria that hadn't been used in a decade. My cart's wheels squeaked rhythmically as I walked, the sound echoing off the walls. I reached C-Wing and checked my list. Rooms C18, C20, C22, and C24 were occupied. The others, C19, C21, C23, stood empty between them, waiting for their next patients. I started with C24, knocking softly before entering. The patient was an elderly man named Mr. Kovac, recovering from a stroke. He was asleep, breathing steadily, the monitors beeping softly. I emptied his trash, mopped the bathroom, kept my movements quiet and efficient. 15 minutes in and out. C22 was similar. An elderly woman, Mrs. Chen, barely conscious, machines breathing for her. Her family had been there earlier. I could see the remnants of their visit, crumpled tissues, a forgotten sweater on the chair. I cleaned around her carefully, trying not to disturb the room's stillness. C20 was empty. I mean, it was on my list as occupied. But when I knocked and entered, the bed was stripped, the monitors off. Sometimes patients got discharged or moved, and the list didn't update immediately. I did a quick clean anyway, emptied the trash, wiped down surfaces, checked the bathroom. C18 was occupied by a middle-aged man named David Reese, according to the chart on the door. Car accident, multiple injuries, stable but sedated. I knocked, got no response, and entered quietly. The room was dimmer than the others, only the monitor lights and a small lamp by the bed. Reese was asleep, bandages visible on his head and arms, IV lines running into him. I moved as quietly as possible, emptying the trash, checking the bathroom. As I was mopping, I heard him speak. "Nurse?" I turned. His eyes were half open, unfocused. "I'm just the custodian, Mr. Reese. Sorry to disturb you. I'll be done in a minute." "What time is it?" I checked my phone. "Almost midnight." He was quiet for a moment then. "Is it still Tuesday?" "Yes, sir." "Well, technically Wednesday now, just after midnight." "Good." His eyes drifted closed again. "She said she'd come on Tuesday. Promised." I didn't respond, just finished mopping and left him to sleep. Patients on pain medication said odd things. I'd learned not to engage too much. I moved on to the empty section of C-Wing, pushing my cart past room C17 down to C1. These rooms were darker, most with doors closed. I didn't need to do deep cleans, just a quick sweep for dust, check that nothing looked damaged or out of place, make sure the heat was maintaining proper temperature since winter was coming. I worked my way methodically down the hall, C17, C16, C15. Empty rooms, all the same. Bare mattresses, silent monitors, curtains drawn. The windows looked out onto the employee parking lot, where my car sat alone under a streetlight. At C11, I noticed something odd. The door was slightly ajar. All the other empty rooms had been closed. I pushed it open and hit the light switch. The room was empty like the others, but something was off. The bed wasn't stripped. It was made, covers pulled tight, pillow fluffed, like someone was expected. The monitors were off but plugged in. The whiteboard where nurses wrote patient names and care instructions had writing on it. I stepped closer to read it. Written in blue marker, neat handwriting. Sarah Palmer, DNR, no visitors. I'd never seen a room prepped like this without an actual patient. Maybe they were expecting an admission tonight, but why would it be in this abandoned section rather than the active end of C-Wing? I decided it wasn't my problem. If someone had prepped a room, that was nursing's business. I did a cursory clean and moved on. C10, C9, C8, all empty and closed. C7's door was also ajar. That made me pause. 2 rooms in the abandoned section, both with doors open when all the others were closed. I pushed the door wider. This room was also made up. Bed prepared, monitors plugged in. The whiteboard, Martin Hayes, high fall risk, check Q2H. My unease deepened. 2 rooms, prepared for patients, in a section that wasn't supposed to be in use. I pulled out my phone and texted Miguel. "Hey, did they start using C-Wing empty rooms again? C7 and C11 are set up." I waited, watching the 3 dots appear as he typed back. "Not that I heard. Maybe ask Denise." I forwarded the question to Denise. Her response: "No idea. Ask the night nurse?" The night nurse on duty was Sandra, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd worked at Clearwater for 20 years. I headed back to the main hospital to find her. The nurse's station was on the second floor. Sandra was there, typing notes into a computer, looking tired. She glanced up when I approached. "Sandra, quick question. Are we starting to use the empty C-wing rooms? A couple of them look prepped for patients." She frowned. "Which rooms?" "C7 and C11. Her frown deepened. "We're not using those. C-wing is being phased down, not expanded." "You sure they're prepped?" "Beds made, monitors plugged in, patient names on the whiteboards." "What names?" "Sarah Palmer in C11, Martin Hayes in C7. Sandra's face went carefully blank. She stood up. "Show me." We walked back to C-wing together, her pace quick and purposeful. She didn't say anything, but I could feel tension radiating off her. We reached C11 first. The door was closed. I stopped. It was open before, like 10 minutes ago. Sandra opened it and hit the lights. The room was empty. Bed stripped, monitors unplugged. The whiteboard was blank. My mouth went dry. "This isn't..." I saw it. The bed was made. The name was on the board. "What name?" "Sarah Palmer." It said DNR, no visitors. Sandra's jaw tightened. She walked quickly to C7. That door was also now closed. She opened it. Empty room, stripped bed, blank whiteboard. "Martin Hayes," I said before she could ask. "High fall risk." Sandra stared at the empty whiteboard. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "Come with me." We went back to the nurse's station. She unlocked a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder, flipped through it, found what she was looking for. She set 2 sheets of paper on the desk in front of me. Patient records, printed on hospital letterhead dated October 14th, 2012, 5 years ago, almost to the day. The first record, Sarah Palmer, age 73, admitted for end-stage COPD, DNR order, died October 17th, 2012, in room C11. The second record, Martin Hayes, age 61, admitted for complications from a fall, high fall risk, died October 17th, 2012, in room C7. The same night, 5 years ago, today's date. "They both died on the same night?" I asked. "It was a bad night," Sandra said quietly. "We had a nasty flu outbreak that fall. The wing was overloaded. We were short-staffed. We lost 4 patients that night across the hospital. Sarah and Martin were 2 of them. I was on shift. I remember it clearly. Why were their rooms set up? They weren't. You saw something, but it wasn't real. Not in the way you think." "I don't understand." Sandra looked at me for a long moment, deciding something. Finally, "This hospital has been here since 1965. A lot of people have died in these rooms. Most deaths are peaceful, expected, but some aren't. And sometimes on anniversaries, especially in the old wings." She trailed off. "You're saying the hospital is haunted. I'm saying the building remembers, especially C-wing. It's happened to other staff, usually custodians, sometimes nurses pulling late shifts. You see rooms prepared for patients who aren't there. You hear call buttons from empty rooms. You see someone in a bed, and when you look again, they're gone." She closed the folder. "It's always worse around anniversaries. October 17th was a bad night. The building remembers bad nights." I wanted to argue, to insist there had to be a logical explanation. Someone was pranking me. I'd been tired and seen things wrong. The rooms hadn't actually been made up. I'd misread the situation. But I knew what I'd seen. Those rooms had been prepared. The names had been on the whiteboards in handwriting I could still picture clearly. "What do I do?" I asked. "Finish your shift. Avoid empty rooms as much as possible. Don't engage if you see anything else unusual. Don't speak to it. Don't acknowledge it. Just do your job and leave." Sandra's expression softened slightly. "This job isn't for everyone. No shame in requesting a different assignment if C-wing bothers you." I considered it. But I needed this job, needed the money, and part of me, the stubborn part, refused to be driven away by something I didn't understand. "I'll finish my shift," I said. Sandra nodded. "Be careful." I went back to C Wing. The corridor felt different now. Heavier, more attentive. I finished checking the empty rooms quickly. Didn't linger, kept my eyes forward. Rooms C7 and C11 remained closed and empty. At 2:30 a.m., I was mopping the corridor when I heard it. A call button alarm coming from the C Wing nurse's station panel. The panel lit up. Room C11. Sarah Palmer's room. The room that was supposed to be empty. I stared at the blinking light. Every instinct screamed to ignore it, to follow Sandra's advice and not engage. But what if someone actually was in there? What if a confused patient had wandered in, or a homeless person had snuck into the hospital for shelter? I walked slowly down the corridor to C11. The door was closed. I knocked. No response. I opened it. The bed was occupied. A woman lay there, elderly, oxygen mask on her face, thin gray hair spread on the pillow. Her eyes were closed. The monitors were on, displaying vitals, heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels. I stood frozen in the doorway. This was impossible. The room had been empty 30 minutes ago. As I watched, her eyes opened. She looked directly at me. "Can you call my daughter?" Her voice was muffled by the oxygen mask, but clear. "She promised she'd visit today. I need to see her." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. "Please," the woman said. "I don't have much time. Tell her I'm not angry about before. Tell her I love her. Can you do that?" My throat unlocked. I'll tell the nurse. Thank you." Her eyes drifted closed again. I backed out of the room, pulled the door shut, and walked quickly to the nurse's station. I picked up the phone and called Sandra's extension. "There's someone in C11, I said when she answered. "No, there isn't. There's a woman in the bed. She's on oxygen. She talked to me. She asked me to call her daughter." Silence on the line. Then, "I'm coming down." Sandra arrived 5 minutes later with another nurse, a younger woman named Jessica. They followed me to C11. I opened the door. Empty. Stripped bed. Unplugged monitors. Blank whiteboard. Jessica looked confused. Sandra's expression was unreadable. "There was a woman here," I insisted. "She was on oxygen. She spoke to me. She asked about her daughter." Sandra stepped into the room, walked to the bed, put her hand on the bare mattress. Sarah Palmer's daughter visited her that morning in 2012. They'd been estranged for years, had a complicated relationship. The daughter left around noon. Sarah died that night at 11:43 p.m. Her daughter never came back. She called the nurse's station at 2:30 a.m., said she'd changed her mind, wanted to visit after all, asked if it was too late. Sandra looked at me. We had to tell her yes, it was too late. Sarah had died 3 hours earlier. The time clicked into place. It was now 2:47 a.m. I'd heard the call button around 2:30 a.m. "The building doesn't just remember deaths," Sandra said quietly. "It remembers regrets." I left C Wing and didn't go back that night. I finished my shift cleaning other areas of the hospital, avoiding that entire section. Miguel found me around 5 a.m., mopping the same hallway for the third time, and asked if I was okay. I told him I was tired. He didn't press. When my shift ended at 7 a.m., I sat in my car for 20 minutes before driving home. I called in sick the next 2 nights, claiming flu. On my next shift, I requested reassignment. My supervisor was understanding. Apparently turnover on C Wing was high. They moved me to the surgical wing with Miguel. I never worked C Wing again, but I learned from other custodians that the experiences continued. One guy saw a man in a hospital gown standing in C7's doorway, looking lost and confused, asking where his wife was. When the custodian tried to help him back to bed, the man vanished. Another custodian heard sobbing from C15, found a woman sitting on the empty bed weeping, and when she asked if the woman needed help, the woman looked up and said, "I thought there'd be more time." Then she was gone. The hospital administration never acknowledged it officially. How could they? But unofficially, among the staff who worked nights, everyone knew. C Wing remembered. It held onto its worst moments and replayed them, especially around anniversaries. Clearwater Regional Medical Center closed C Wing permanently in 2019, 2 years after my experience. The official reason was budget constraints and declining patient numbers. But I heard from Miguel that the real reason was that they couldn't keep staff assigned there. Too many people requested transfers. Too many quit entirely. The building still stands. C Wing is empty now, locked and dark. Sometimes I drive past it on my way through town. I moved to Minneapolis in 2018, but visit my parents occasionally. When I see the hospital, I always look for C Wing's windows. Sometimes late at night, lights are on in rooms that should be empty. Sometimes I see a silhouette in a window, standing still, looking out. The building remembers, and it's still waiting for visitors who will never come, still hoping for conversations that ended too soon, still holding vigil over regrets that can never be resolved. I'm glad I don't work there anymore, but I think about Sarah Palmer sometimes, about her asking me to call her daughter. I think about how close they came to reconciling, hours, just hours apart. I think about the daughter's 2:30 a.m. phone call, 3 hours too late. I wonder if Sarah's still there, still asking custodians and nurses to call her daughter. I wonder if she'll ever stop. Story 4. My best friend Daniel vanished in June of 2021. Not the kind of vanishing where someone decides to start fresh and cuts contact. Not the kind where there's foul play and eventually a body. The kind where one moment a person exists in the world, and the next moment they simply don't, leaving no evidence they ever went anywhere at all. We'd been friends since college, the kind of close friendship where we could go months without talking, and pick right back up, like no time had passed. After graduation, Daniel moved to Seattle for a tech job while I stayed in Chicago. We texted regularly, visited each other a couple times a year, had one of those friendships that felt permanent. In May 2021, Daniel texted me about a new app he was beta testing. He was always early adopting some new technology. That was his nature, part of what made him good at his job. This particular app was called Recall, and it was being developed by a startup Daniel wouldn't name, bound by an NDA. It's like Google Photos on steroids, he texted. You take a picture of anything, a place, an object, a person, and it shows you every other photo in your library that's connected. It uses some insane AI pattern recognition. It's showing me connections in my photo history I never noticed. I was mildly interested, but not enough to ask for beta access. I had enough apps on my phone. Over the next few weeks, Daniel mentioned Recall sporadically. He'd text me weird observations. Recall found a woman in the background of 8 photos I took over 3 years in different states. Same woman. How is that possible? Or, the app is showing me people in my photos who I don't remember being there, like it's adding them retroactively. But that's crazy. I chalked it up to Daniel being his enthusiastic, slightly paranoid techie self. I was busy with my own life, new job, new relationship, the usual chaos of being 30 years old and barely holding adulthood together. On June 15th, 2021, Daniel called me at 11 p.m., Chicago time, 9 p.m., his time. He sounded strange, not scared exactly, but unsettled in a way I'd never heard from him before. "I need you to remember something for me," he said without preamble. "Okay? My apartment number, it's 614. Can you remember that? Daniel, what's going on? Just write it down, and my address, 2847 Pine Street, Seattle. My mom's name is Catherine. My birthday is March 9th, 1991. My car is a 2018 Honda Civic Silver. License plate." He rattled off the number. "Write all of this down. You're freaking me out. I think recall is doing something to my photos. No, that's not right. I think it's doing something to my memory. Or to reality. I can't tell which." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "I sound insane. Maybe I am. What do you mean it's changing reality?" "I took a photo today at the coffee shop I go to every morning. Used recall to see connections. It showed me 23 previous photos from that same coffee shop over the past year. But in 5 of those photos, there's a man sitting at the corner table. Same man, same table, 5 different days. I don't remember him. More than that, I looked at the original photos in my regular library, and he's not there. He's only visible when I view them through recall. Maybe it's a glitch, AI misidentifying. It's not a glitch. I went back through older photos, from before I had recall. Places I've lived, events I attended, and people are different. Not all people, but some. There are individuals in my photos who I don't recognize, standing where I remember other people standing. And when I check the same photos on my laptop, people are different again. My photos are changing depending on where I view them. Daniel, seriously, you should talk to the app developers. This sounds like I tried. I emailed the contact address from the beta program. It bounced. I called the phone number. Disconnected. I can't find any information about the company anymore. It's like they don't exist. He was spiraling. I'd never heard him like this. Maybe delete the app, I suggested. If it's causing problems. I tried. It won't delete. I can remove it from my home screen, but it's still in my phone storage, running in the background. I did a factory reset. It came back. His breathing was sharp over the line. I think it's not an app anymore. I think I let something into my phone, and now it's spreading into everything. My photos, my cloud storage, my memory. Come visit me, I said. Take a few days off work. Fly to Chicago. We'll figure this out together. Sometimes you need distance from something to see it clearly. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "Yeah, okay, that's good. I'll book a flight for tomorrow. Text me your flight info." "I will." "And you wrote down everything I told you. Apartment number, address, all of it." "I wrote it down." "Good. Just in case." He hesitated. "In case I forget." We hung up. I looked at the notes I'd scribbled on the pad by my phone. Daniel's address, apartment number, his mother's name, his license plate. It felt melodramatic, but if it made him feel better, fine. The next morning, June 16th, I woke to no text from Daniel. I sent him a message. "Flight info." No response. I waited an hour and called him. It went straight to voicemail. I tried throughout the day, getting increasingly worried. By evening, I was considering calling Seattle police for a wellness check. But what would I say? My friend is acting paranoid about a phone app and now isn't answering. On June 17th, still nothing. I called his work, the company he'd told me he worked for, a tech firm called Innovator. The receptionist said she'd transfer me to Daniel's extension. After a long pause, she came back on the line. "I'm sorry, we don't have anyone by that name in our directory." Daniel Park. He's worked there for 4 years. He's a senior developer. I've been here for 3 years, and I don't know a Daniel Park. Let me check our employee records. Another pause. No Daniel Park in our system. Are you sure you have the right company? I hung up, confused and frightened now. I pulled up Daniel's LinkedIn profile. It loaded, but something was wrong. His work history showed different companies. Instead of Innovacor, it listed a company called Vertex Solutions. His job title was different. His profile photo was different, similar enough to be him but slightly off, like it was a cousin or a picture taken from an unflattering angle. I checked our text message history. The last message from him, from June 15th, read, "Just remember what I told you." The message I sent asking for flight info was there, but now it showed as delivered, with no indication it had been read. I called his mother, Catherine. I'd met her twice, knew her number from Daniel's contact card he'd shared with me years ago. A woman answered. "Hello? Hi, Mrs. Park. This is Trevor, Daniel's friend from Chicago. I'm trying to reach Daniel and... I'm sorry, who? Daniel, your son." Silence. Then, "I don't have a son named Daniel." My blood went cold. "Daniel Park, born March 9th, 1991. He lives in Seattle. You have the wrong number. You're Catherine Park, right?" "Yes, but you have a son. His name is Daniel. You have to remember..." She hung up. I sat on my couch, shaking. I pulled out the note I'd written 2 nights before. Apartment 614, 2847 Pine Street, silver Honda Civic, license plate number. I booked a last-minute flight to Seattle. Whatever was happening, I needed to physically go to Daniel's apartment, confirm he was okay, figure this out in person. I arrived in Seattle the next afternoon, June 18th, rented a car, and drove directly to 2847 Pine Street. It was a modern apartment building in Capitol Hill, exactly as Daniel had described it in past conversations. I parked and went to the building's entrance. There was a directory panel with buttons for each unit. I scrolled through looking for 614. It wasn't there. The 6th floor went from unit 614 to 615. I stood there, staring at the directory, trying to make sense of it. I hit the button for 615, no answer. I tried 614. A woman's voice answered. "Hi, sorry to bother you, but do you know if there's a unit 614 in this building?" "No, just 613 and 615 on this floor." "Who is this?" I hung up. I tried the main entrance, locked, requiring a key fob. I waited until another resident came out and caught the door before it closed, slipping inside. The 6th floor was straightforward, a single hallway with units on either side. I walked down it, checking numbers. 611, 6113, 615, 617. No 614. The space where it should be, between 613 and 615, was just wall. But the spacing was wrong. The distance between 613 and 615 was longer than between other units. Like there should be something there, but the wall had extended to cover it. I knocked on 613's door. The same woman from the intercom answered, middle-aged, suspicious. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for my friend Daniel. He told me he lives in Unit 614. "There is no Unit 614. Are you sure you have the right building?" 2847 Pine Street. "That's here, but there's no 642. Never has been." I showed her a photo of Daniel on my phone, one from 2 years ago, before all this started. "Have you seen this person?" She studied it. "Maybe. He looks familiar, but I can't place him." "Sorry." She closed the door. I stood in the hallway, staring at the wall that was too long, trying to understand what had happened. Daniel lived here. He told me apartment 614. I'd written it down, but now it didn't exist. I went back to my rental car and checked my phone. I pulled up my photos, looking for pictures of Daniel. I had hundreds. College photos, trips we'd taken, random hangouts over the years. They were all there, but Daniel looked subtly different in each one. Not like different lighting or angles, like he was a slightly different person in each photo. Similar features, but wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. His smile was slightly crooked. His hair parted on the wrong side. His eyes were a different shade. And in some photos, he wasn't there at all anymore. Group shots where I remembered him standing next to me now showed just me, or me with a gap beside me, or me with someone I didn't recognize. I was losing him. Whatever recall had done, whatever Daniel had encountered, it was erasing him retroactively. Not just making him disappear now, but removing him from the past. I spent 3 more days in Seattle, searching. I went to coffee shops Daniel had mentioned, showed his photo to baristas. No one recognized him, or they'd say, maybe, with that same vague uncertainty. I visited Innovacor. The building existed, but they confirmed they never employed Daniel. Vertex Solutions, the company now listed on his LinkedIn, didn't exist at all. I filed a missing persons report. The police took my information but seemed confused. When I showed them photos of Daniel, they couldn't understand who I was reporting. "Who is this?" they kept asking, as if the photos showed no one at all. On June 22nd, I flew back to Chicago. I kept checking my phone, watching my photo library. Daniel was fading from more pictures each day. Sometimes I'd look at a photo and he'd be there, and an hour later I'd look at the same photo and he'd be gone, or replaced by someone else, or the composition would be different entirely. I tried to tell people. My girlfriend listened patiently, but clearly thought I was having a breakdown. My other friends suggested I see a therapist. No one else remembered Daniel. I'd mention my friend from Seattle, and they'd ask who I meant. I'd say, Danielle, we went to college together, and they'd look at me blankly. I went through my old college yearbooks. He wasn't in them. I checked social media. His accounts were gone. Email chains we'd had vanished. It was like he'd never existed, except in my increasingly uncertain memory and the notes I'd written on June 15th. I still have those notes. Apartment 614, 2847 Pine Street, silver Honda Civic, license plate number, his mother's name. I keep them in my wallet, taking them out occasionally to make sure they're still there, that they haven't changed. Sometimes I'm not sure if Daniel was real. Maybe I invented him, an imaginary friend whose existence I fabricated and convinced myself of. Maybe I'm experiencing false memories, a psychological condition where I've constructed an elaborate fiction. But I don't think so. I think recall did something. I think Daniel was beta testing an application that didn't just organize photos, it reorganized reality. It found patterns and connections, and by finding them, it changed them. It let Daniel see alternative versions of his own history. And in doing so, it made him unstable, made him optional, until finally, he became so uncertain that reality couldn't decide if he existed or not, and chose not. I've looked for recall. I can't find it in any app store. Can't find any information about the company that supposedly developed it. It's like it never existed either, or exists in a space where it's both real and not real simultaneously. Sometimes late at night, I get texts from an unknown number. Just fragments. Remember, or I'm still here, or 614. I don't know if they're from Daniel, from whatever he became, or from my own mind generating evidence for something I desperately want to be true. I keep looking at my photos. Daniel isn't in any of them anymore, not in any way I can see. But sometimes, when I look at group shots from college or trips we took, there's a space that seems wrong, a gap in the composition where someone should be standing, a blurred figure at the edge of the frame that might be a person or might be a glitch. I think he's there, in those gaps and blurs. I think he's become a pattern of absence, a negative space where a person used to be. And I think recall is still out there, being tested by other people, creating more gaps, more absences, more people who existed, and then don't. If you ever encounter an app called Recall, or anything that promises to show you hidden patterns in your photos, delete it. Don't use it. Don't let it analyze your history, because once it starts finding connections, once it starts showing you alternative versions of your memories, you become negotiable. You become a pattern it can rewrite, and patterns once rewritten can't always be restored. I'm writing this down because I'm starting to forget details. What color were Daniel's eyes? What did his voice sound like? How tall was he? The certainty is slipping, and I'm terrified that one day I'll wake up and not remember him at all, and these notes will be the only evidence that once I had a best friend who disappeared into his own photographs. If that happens, if I forget entirely, maybe someone else will find this and remember for me. Maybe someone else will keep Daniel from vanishing completely. Story 5. I was 17 years old in the summer of 2018 when I got a job as a camp counselor at Pine Lake Summer Camp in northern Wisconsin. It was my first real job, decent pay for a summer gig, and it seemed straightforward. Supervise kids during activities, make sure no one drowned in the lake, lead campfire songs. I'd been a camper there myself when I was younger, had good memories of the place. Pine Lake was a traditional sleepaway camp, rustic cabins, a mess hall with exposed beam ceilings, a lake with a swimming area marked by buoys, dense forest on all sides. It served kids aged 8 to 15, ran in 2-week sessions, and employed about 20 counselors, mostly college students and older high school kids like me. I arrived on June 10th for counselor training, a week before the first campers showed up. The head counselor, a woman named Gretchen who'd been working at Pine Lake for 15 years, ran us through safety protocols, activity schedules, emergency procedures. On the third day of training, she took us on a hike around the property to familiarize us with boundaries. Pine Lake sat on 150 acres, most of it forested. The camp itself, cabins, mess hall, activity areas, occupied maybe 20 acres near the lake. The rest was wilderness, with a few hiking trails but otherwise undeveloped. As we hiked, Gretchen pointed out landmarks, the trail that led to the abandoned fire tower, off limits to campers, the old maintenance shed that hadn't been used in years but still contained some equipment, the property line markers, faded orange tape on trees. About a mile from the main camp, deep in the woods, we came to a clearing. In the center stood a small structure, barely more than a shed, wooden walls weathered gray, a slanted roof, one window with glass so dirty it was opaque. A padlock secured the door. "This is the old storage shed," Gretchen said. "It's locked and will stay locked. It's not part of camp activities. If any campers ask about it, tell them it's private property. If you find any campers near it, bring them back to main camp immediately and report it to me." One of the other counselors, a college guy named Tyler, asked, "What's in it?" "Nothing that concerns us," Gretchen said. Her tone made it clear the subject was closed. We continued the hike, but I kept thinking about the shed. Something about Gretchen's reaction felt off. Too emphatic, too defensive. It was just an old shed. Why the strict rules? That night, I asked one of the returning counselors, a girl named Alexis who'd worked at Pine Lake the previous summer. We were sitting on the dock after dinner, watching the sunset. "What's the deal with that shed in the woods?" I asked. Alexis was quiet for a long moment. Then, "How much has Gretchen told you?" Just that it's off limits. That's all you need to know. Come on, there's obviously a story. She looked at me, considering. Finally. 3 years ago, a camper went missing. 9-year-old kid named Lucas Brennan. He vanished during free time one afternoon. We did a full search. Counselors, local police, search and rescue. Took almost 6 hours. They found him at that shed. Was he okay? Physically, yes. But he wasn't the same. He didn't talk for 2 weeks, just stared at nothing. When he finally spoke, he said he'd gone inside to meet the friend, and that the friend wanted him to stay forever. His parents pulled him from camp, obviously. I don't know what happened to him after that. My skin prickled. Someone was in the shed? They checked. It was empty except for some old camp equipment, rusty tools, nothing unusual. No sign anyone had been inside for years. The lock hadn't been tampered with, but Lucas insisted he'd been inside, that someone had let him in, that he'd spent days and days there, even though he'd only been missing for 6 hours. Psychological episode? Maybe. But here's the thing. After that, other stuff started happening. Counselors would hear things near that shed at night. Singing or laughter, or voices calling names. People would see lights inside even though there's no electricity. One counselor went to investigate, got within 10 feet of it, and said she felt like she was being watched by something behind the window, something that wanted her to come closer. Alexis shrugged. Gretchen doesn't talk about it. Made us all sign NDAs about Lucas for liability reasons. But the shed is off limits now. Permanently. I should have let it go. I should have accepted that old camps have legends, that places acquire mythology, that a traumatized kid's confused account didn't mean anything supernatural was happening. But I was 17 and thought I was braver than I was. The first camp session started June 17th. I was assigned to Cabin 4, 8 boys aged 10 to 11. They were good kids mostly, energetic, a little wild, but manageable. We settled into the routine. Wake-up bell at 7 a.m. Breakfast, morning activities, lunch, free time, afternoon activities, dinner, evening program, lights out at 9:30 p.m. I tried not to think about the shed. But sometimes at night, lying in my bunk in the counselor cabin, I'd look out the window toward the dark forest and wonder, what was really in there? Why had Lucas Brennan reacted so strongly? What had he experienced? On June 23rd, one of my campers, a kid named Ethan, asked me during a hike, "What's that building in the woods?" My stomach dropped. "Where did you see a building?" "Yesterday, during free time. Me and Josh went exploring past the boathouse and saw it. A little house with a window." "That's off limits," I said firmly. "You shouldn't have been that far from main camp. Stay within the boundaries, okay?" "Why is it off limits?" "Because those are the rules." He looked unsatisfied, but didn't push. That night, I reported it to Gretchen. She nodded grimly. "I'll remind everyone at the next all-camp meeting. Thanks for telling me." But the next day, I overheard 2 girls from Cabin 7 talking about the secret house in the forest, and how they wanted to explore it. The shed was becoming a focus, the way forbidden things do at summer camp. The more we said it was off limits, the more interested the campers became. On June 28th, a night I had off from cabin duty, I made a decision. I was going to the shed. I was going to look inside, confirm it was just an old storage building, and demystify it in my own mind. Then I'd stop thinking about it. I waited until midnight, when the camp was asleep. I took a flashlight and walked into the woods following the trail from our training hike. The forest at night was alive with sounds, crickets, rustling leaves, distant animal calls. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, catching tree trunks and undergrowth. It took me 20 minutes to find the clearing. The shed stood exactly as I remembered, gray and weathered, the padlock still on the door. I approached slowly, my heart hammering. Up close, the shed looked even more decrepit. The wood was rotting in places, the roof sagging. The window was coated in grime and cobwebs. I shined my flashlight through it, trying to see inside. The interior was a mess. Old tools, broken furniture, cobwebs everywhere. Nothing unusual, nothing that explained Lucas's reaction or the stories. I tried the padlock. Solid, no give. I wasn't getting inside without bolt cutters or a key. As I stood there deciding what to do, I heard it. A sound from inside the shed. Not wind, not an animal. A voice. Hello? I froze. The voice was young, childlike. It sounded muffled, coming from deep inside the shed. Is someone there? The voice called. My rational mind said, animal, echo, my imagination. But I heard it clearly. Help me, the voice said. I've been here so long. Please let me out. I stepped back. Who's in there? I don't remember my name. I've been here forever. Please open the door. Every horror movie instinct screamed at me to run, but another part of me thought, what if there's actually a kid in there? What if someone got locked in or hurt and needs help? I don't have a key, I called. You don't need a key. Just open it. It'll open for you. I reached for the padlock. My hand was shaking. I pulled on it, expecting resistance. It opened. The padlock, which had been secured, simply fell open in my hand. I stared at it, then at the door. Thank you, the voice said from inside. Come in. I want to see you. I dropped the padlock and backed away. Whatever was inside wasn't a trapped kid. Doors didn't open on their own. Voices didn't come from empty sheds. Come in, the voice repeated, but it sounded different now. Older, less childlike, more insistent. I've been waiting. Come inside and stay. I ran. I don't remember the path back, just the sound of my own breathing and my feet pounding the trail. I burst out of the woods near the counselor cabins, gasping, and didn't stop until I was inside with the door locked. I didn't sleep. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, trying to rationalize what I'd heard. The padlock had been corroded, came apart when I touched it. The voice was wind through gaps in the shed's walls, my mind pattern matching it into words. But I knew what I'd heard, and I knew the padlock had been solid until I reached for it. The next morning, I went back during daylight, bringing Tyler with me. I told him I'd heard something near the shed last night. Wanted to check it out. We reached the clearing. The shed stood silent. The padlock was back in place, secured, as if it had never opened. Tyler tried it. Lock tight. You sure you were here? Positive? He shrugged. Maybe you found a different shed. There's lots of old structures in these woods. But I knew this was the right clearing, the right shed. The padlock had opened for me and then closed itself. I stayed away from the shed after that. I told myself I'd imagined the voice. That stress and suggestion had caused a brief break with reality. I focused on my campers, on activities, on getting through the session, but on July 4th, Ethan went missing. It happened during the afternoon free period. Campers were allowed to swim, play games, hang out within designated areas. Ethan asked if he could go to the bathroom in his cabin. I said yes. 15 minutes later, he hadn't returned. I checked the cabin, empty. I checked the bathrooms, the mess hall, the lake. Ethan was gone. We initiated the emergency protocol. All campers were gathered and accounted for. Everyone present except Ethan. Counselors spread out across camp, searching every building, every trail, the lakeshore. Gretchen called the local police. I knew where he was. I ran into the woods, toward the shed, dread choking me. I reached the clearing, gasping. Ethan was standing at the shed's door. It was open. He was staring inside. "Ethan!" I shouted. He didn't turn. He took a step toward the threshold. I sprinted across the clearing and grabbed him, pulling him back. He struggled, trying to get free. "Let go. He's inside. He wants to show me something." "There's nothing inside," I said, holding him tight. "We're going back to camp." "But he's been waiting for so long. He said I could stay. He said we'd be friends forever." I dragged Ethan away from the shed, back down the trail. He fought me the whole way, crying, begging to go back. By the time we reached camp, he'd exhausted himself, gone limp. Gretchen took one look at us and understood. She called Ethan's parents. He was picked up that night, early withdrawal from camp. I don't know what they told the family, but I heard later that Ethan had nightmares for months afterward, kept drawing pictures of a dark room with a figure standing in the corner. Gretchen pulled me into her office that evening. "You went to the shed." It wasn't a question. I nodded. "What did you experience?" I told her everything. The voice, the padlock opening, what Ethan had said. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I'm going to tell you something I've never told other counselors," she finally said. "This camp has been here since 1962. That shed predates the camp. It was here when the property was purchased. The original owners tried to tear it down twice. Both times, workers refused to continue after the first day. They reported hearing things, seeing things, feeling overwhelming dread near it. Eventually, the camp founders decided to leave it, put a lock on it, and treat it as off-limits. For decades, that worked. But every few years, something happens. A camper gets drawn to it, hears something calling them. We've had 6 incidents over the years, including Lucas and now Ethan. Every kid describes the same thing. A voice promising friendship, saying they should come inside and stay forever. We don't know what it is. I've had priests bless the property, had paranormal investigators assess it. They refused to enter the clearing, said it was wrong in ways they couldn't explain. I've considered burning the shed down, but I'm terrified of what that might release. So we just leave it? We keep campers away from it. We keep ourselves away from it. Whatever is there, it's contained as long as that door stays closed." She looked at me hard. "You opened the door. It opened itself. Did it? Or did you open it because it wanted you to?" I had no answer. I finished the summer. 2 more sessions, no further incidents. I stayed far from the shed, warned my campers repeatedly about boundary rules. I never went into that part of the woods again. On my last day, August 15th, as I was packing to leave, Gretchen found me. "I'm not asking you back next year," she said bluntly. "Not because you did anything wrong, but because that thing now knows you. It called to you, and you answered. If you come back, it'll call again, and next time, you might go inside." I left Pine Lake that day and never returned. I've thought about the shed constantly over the years. I've researched the property's history, found records of the land dating back to the 1870s, when it was a homestead. The family that lived there, the Wickers, abandoned it suddenly in 1889. No record of why, just a note in county documents that the property was vacant and returned to the county for unpaid taxes. I found one newspaper clipping from 1888, a tiny item in the back pages. "Wicker family of Pine Lake reports youngest daughter missing." Search ongoing. The daughter, Mary Wicker, age 9, was never found. I think about Mary Wicker. I think about Lucas and Ethan and the other children over the decades who heard a voice from the shed. I think about what Alexis told me, that Lucas said he'd spent days and days inside, even though only 6 hours had passed. I think something is in that shed. Something old, something patient, something that calls to children and promises friendship. Something that wants them to come inside and stay forever. And I think about the fact that I opened the door, that it opened for me when I reached for it, that somewhere in those woods, in that gray-weathered shed, something knows my name now. Sometimes late at night I swear I hear it, faint, distant, like it's calling from very far away. Come back, it says. Come inside. I've been waiting. I'll never go back to Pine Lake, but I'm afraid that someday I won't have a choice. That the door I open will pull me back, and I'll walk into those woods and into that shed, and I'll finally see what's been waiting all these years. What's been waiting since 1888. What's still waiting now. If you ever find yourself at Pine Lake Summer Camp, stay away from the woods. Stay away from clearings. And if you hear a voice calling your name, promising friendship, begging you to come inside, run. And whatever you do, don't open the door. We've reached the end of tonight's journey. Thank you for staying with me through all 5 stories, for letting me share these accounts that still unsettle me in the quiet hours. There's something profound about sitting together in the darkness, sharing stories that remind us how fragile our certainty is, how thin the line between the known and unknown. I'll be back tomorrow night with more tales from that shadowy space where the explainable ends. Until then, I hope you sleep peacefully. After all, they're only stories, aren't they? Rest well, and I'll see you again soon.